Part 1. The stars had never seemed so cold to Ambassador as they did through the viewport of the diplomatic shuttle. Behind her, the rest of the human delegation sat in uncomfortable silence, their formal uniforms pressed and perfect, their faces carefully neutral. They all knew what was coming. Every species that had ever petitioned the Galactic Conclave for membership had faced the same ritual humiliation. Humanity would be no different. The shuttle was called the Horizon's Hope, and it was the finest diplomatic vessel Earth could publicly reveal. Compared to the sleek warships of the elder races, it looked like a cargo hauler. The hull was thick and practical. The engines were reliable but slow. Everything about it screamed primitive, young, untested. This was intentional, though none of the aliens would ever suspect it. Watched Nexus Prime grow larger in the viewport. The station was ancient beyond human comprehension, a massive structure of interconnected rings and spires that had served as the heart of galactic civilization for 10,000 years. 47 spacefaring species sent their representatives here to debate, to trade, and to decide the fates of those who sought to join their exclusive club. Humanity had been aware of the conclave for only 60 years, ever since first contact with a Chur trading vessel near the outer colonies. Now, after 2 decades of careful diplomacy and cautious expansion, they had finally been invited to make their case. The docking procedure took almost an hour. Conclave security scanned the shuttle 17 times, each scan more invasive than the last. They were looking for weapons, of course, but also for technology that might suggest humanity was more advanced than their public profile indicated. They found nothing unusual. The shuttle was exactly what it appeared to be, a modest vessel from a modest species. When the airlock finally opened, led her delegation into the receiving hall. The space was vast and designed to intimidate. Columns of polished stone rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Holographic displays showed the emblems of every member species, each one a reminder of the power and history that humanity lacked. Alien officials moved through the hall in clusters, speaking in languages that the human translation devices could barely parse. None of them looked at the human delegation. None of them needed to. Everyone knew why they were here, and everyone knew how the vote would go. A Chur administrator approached them, its compound eyes glittering in the artificial light. The Chur were beings, covered in hard shells of iridescent chitin. They had been among the first species to achieve interstellar travel, and they never let anyone forget it. This one clicked its mandibles in a gesture that the translator identified as mild contempt. "The human delegation will proceed to Chamber 7, it said, its voice a mechanical buzz filtered through the translation device. "The conclave will hear your petition in 3 standard hours. You may use the waiting facilities until then." Nodded politely. "Thank you. We appreciate the conclave's willingness to hear our case." The Chur made a sound that might have been laughter. "The conclave hears all cases. Whether it grants them is another matter entirely." It turned and walked away without another word. The waiting facilities were comfortable but clearly designed for beings other than humans. The chairs were too large, the lighting too dim, the air too warm. Teams settled in as best they could, reviewing their notes and running through their presentation one final time. They had prepared for months, gathering data on human achievements, human culture, human potential. None of it would matter. Knew that, and so did everyone else. This was theater, nothing more. Deputy Ambassador James sat down beside her, his dark face troubled. "I've been monitoring the local networks," he said quietly. "The betting markets are giving us a 0% chance of approval. Some species are already celebrating our rejection." Allowed herself a small smile. "Let them celebrate. It makes what comes next more satisfying." James gave her a curious look but said nothing. He had been briefed on the contingency plan, just like every member of the delegation. He knew that the Horizon's Hope was not humanity's only card to play. But knowing and believing were different things, and James was still struggling to accept that everything he had been told was true. The 3 hours passed slowly. used the time to study the other delegations moving through the station. She identified warriors in their distinctive silver armor, their feline faces sharp with predatory intelligence. She spotted monumentals drifting through the corridors, their silicon bodies towering over every other species. She watched Chur administrators scurrying about their business, always busy, always watching. These were the powers that ruled the galaxy. These were the species that would decide humanity's fate. When the summons finally came, straightened her uniform and led her delegation toward Chamber 7. The chamber was circular, with tiered seating rising toward the ceiling on all sides. Representatives from every member species filled the seats, their eyes fixed on the small platform at the center where the human delegation now stood. Above them, a massive holographic display showed Earth and its surrounding colonies, the tiny bubble of space that humanity called home. High Speaker of the presided over the session from an elevated dais. He was tall and lean, his silver fur marked with patterns that indicated high noble birth. His yellow eyes regarded the humans with the patient contempt of a predator examining prey that posed no threat. When he spoke, his voice carried effortlessly through the chamber. "The Galactic Conclave recognizes the delegation from Earth," he said. "You may present your petition for associate membership." Stepped forward, her hands steady, her voice calm. "Distinguished representatives, I come before you today on behalf of humanity. We are a young species, and we do not pretend otherwise. We achieved faster-than-light travel only 80 years ago, a blink of time compared to the ancient civilizations gathered in this chamber. But we believe that youth is not a weakness. It is potential." She launched into her presentation, describing human achievements in science, medicine, art, and philosophy. She spoke of Earth's diverse cultures, its long struggle toward unity, its dreams of taking its place among the stars. She presented data on human innovation, human adaptability, human resilience. She made the best case she could, knowing all the while that it would not be enough. The questions began before she had finished speaking. The Chur representative clicked its mandibles and asked why humans had so few colonies compared to species half their age. Explained that humanity preferred careful expansion over rapid conquest. The Chur made that laughing sound again. The monumental delegate rumbled a question about human. When confirmed that most humans lived less than a century, a murmur of disbelief rippled through the chamber. How can such brief creatures possibly contribute to decisions that span? The monumental asked. Had no good answer. But the worst came from High Speaker himself. He activated a holographic display showing the human fleet alongside the naval forces of the Empire. The comparison was brutal. Human dreadnoughts looked like toys next to battle cruisers. Human fighters were barely visible against the massive carrier ships that formed the backbone of power. "Your largest warship," said, his voice dripping with amusement, "would serve adequately as a recreational yacht for my offspring. Your entire fleet could be destroyed in an afternoon by a single battle group. What exactly do you believe you can offer the Conclave?" Felt the anger rising in her chest, but she kept her face neutral. "We offer partnership," she said. "We offer fresh perspectives. We offer the energy and creativity of a species that is still young enough to dream." Smiled, showing sharp teeth. "Dreams do not win wars, Ambassador. Dreams do not hold territory. Dreams do not earn respect." He turned to address the full chamber. "I move that the human petition be, and that human space be designated a protected wilderness zone, preserved as a curiosity for future study." The vote was quick and brutal. One by one, the member species registered their decisions. Not a single vote supported humanity's petition. The denial was unanimous. Announced the result with obvious satisfaction. "The Conclave has spoken. Humanity is associate membership and will be classified as a pre-civilized species under Conclave protection. Your territory will be respected, but you will have no voice in galactic affairs. You may return to your worlds and continue your development. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you will be ready to join us." stood motionless as the laughter echoed through the chamber. Species that had conquered and destroyed and enslaved their way to power were mocking humanity for being weak. Species that had exterminated entire civilizations were calling humans primitive. The hypocrisy was staggering, but it was also exactly what she had expected. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small communication device. It looked unremarkable, the kind of personal comm unit that any diplomat might carry. But this one connected to something that no one in the chamber could imagine. "Thank you for your decision," said, her voice cutting through the laughter. "We will remember it." She tapped a single button on the device, sending a message that traveled faster than any conclave sensor could track. Then she returned the device to her pocket and smiled at high speaker. "We will see ourselves out," she said. The human delegation walked out of the chamber in perfect formation, their heads held high, their faces revealing nothing. Behind them, the laughter continued. The elder races were still celebrating their easy victory over the primitive newcomers. 12 hours later, every sensor array in conclave space lit up with impossible readings. Something massive was appearing directly above Nexus Prime, something that had been there all along, waiting for this exact moment. The laughter stopped very quickly after that. Part 2. The first warning came from the guard fleet. 12 cruisers had been stationed around Nexus Prime, their weapons systems primed and ready, their crews trained to respond to any threat. They were the pride of the Empire, each one capable of leveling a small moon. In the 90 years since their deployment, they had never encountered anything they could not handle. Now their sensors were screaming warnings that made no sense. A massive energy signature had appeared out of nowhere, directly above the station. It had not arrived through any known FTL corridor. It had not been detected approaching from any direction. It was simply there, as if space itself had folded back to reveal something that had always been hidden. Captain of the cruiser Eternal Fury was the first to get a visual on the object. What he saw made him forget every protocol he had ever learned. He stared at the image on his screen, his yellow eyes wide, his sharp teeth bared in a grimace of pure shock. The vessel was 3 kilometers long. Its hull was black, but not the black of painted metal or ceramic coating. This was a black that seemed to consume light itself, a constantly shifting pattern of angles and surfaces that hurt to look at directly. The ship had no visible engines, no obvious bridge, no markings of any kind. Weapon systems that could not identify studded its length, hundreds of them, each one larger than his entire cruiser. The thing hung in space with the quiet confidence of a predator that had never known fear. "All units battle stations," ordered, his voice steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. "Charge weapons and prepare for engagement." The Eternal Fury's targeting systems tried to lock onto the unknown vessel. They failed. The ship's surface seemed to shift and change, refusing to provide a stable target. Tried again, adjusting frequencies, cycling through every targeting protocol his ship possessed. Nothing worked. The massive vessel remained untouchable. On Nexus Prime, chaos had erupted. The station's alarm systems blared warnings that echoed through every corridor. Representatives from 47 species rushed toward the emergency shelters, their earlier confidence replaced by naked fear. The Chur delegation attempted immediate evacuation, their ships undocking in a frenzy of panicked activity. The Monumentals, beings who measured their lives in and rarely moved faster than a slow walk, were actually running. High Speaker stood in the observation lounge, staring at the impossible ship through the transparent walls. His silver fur was raised, a sign of extreme agitation that he could not control. Hours ago, he had mocked the humans for their primitive fleet. Now something had appeared that made his own warships look like children's toys. "What is that thing?" he demanded. "Where did it come from?" His aide, a young officer named Ara, checked her data pad with trembling hands. "Unknown, High Speaker. Our records show nothing like it. The design matches no known species. The technology appears to be completely original. That's impossible, snarled. Every spacefaring species in this quadrant is a member of the Conclave, every one of them. There are no unknown civilizations advanced enough to build something like that. The answer came a moment later, and it came from Ambassador. Her face appeared on every screen throughout Nexus Prime, projected onto every neural interface, transmitted on every frequency. She was no longer wearing the formal diplomatic robes she had worn to the Conclave session. Instead, she wore a uniform of deep blue and silver, crisp and military, with insignia that no alien had ever seen before. Behind her, the interior of a command bridge was visible, filled with human officers working at stations that pulsed with unfamiliar technology. Distinguished representatives of the Galactic Conclave, said, her voice calm and clear. Allow me to introduce the UEN Silent Prometheus, one of 17 vessels in humanity's Phantom Fleet. She has been observing these proceedings, and indeed has been present in Conclave space for the past 31 years. The silence that followed was absolute. Throughout the station, aliens stared at their screens with expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. 31 years. The humans had been watching them for 31 years. Invisible, undetected, learning everything. Continued, her tone measured and precise. You wondered why humanity's public fleet seemed so primitive compared to your own. The answer is simple. You were never meant to see our real capabilities. We learned long ago that the galaxy judges newcomers harshly. We chose to be underestimated rather than threatened. We chose to prepare in secret rather than reveal ourselves before we were ready. High Speaker finally found his voice. This is an act of war, he shouted, his words broadcast to the entire station. You have violated sovereign space. You have conducted espionage against member species. The Conclave will not tolerate such aggression. Our combined fleets will reduce your hidden ships to debris. His expression did not change. You are welcome to try, High Speaker, but before you give that order, perhaps you should ask yourself some questions. If we could hide one ship from you for 31 years, how many others might be hidden? If we could place a vessel directly above your most secure station without detection, what else might we have placed throughout your territory? If we chose this moment to reveal ourselves, what does that tell you about our confidence in the outcome of any conflict? The silent Prometheus rotated slowly in space, a lazy movement that seemed almost casual. Its weapons arrays tracked across the guard fleet, not firing, not threatening, simply demonstrating that it could destroy them all whenever it wished. Captain watched his targeting systems fail again and again, unable to achieve a lock on the massive vessel. We did not come here for war, said. We came for respect. Humanity has spent 80 years preparing for this day. We have watched your conclave, studied your species, learned your strengths and weaknesses. We know more about your civilizations than you know about yourselves, and we have built weapons and defenses that your scientists cannot even imagine. She paused, letting her words sink in. Throughout Nexus Prime, the panic was beginning to subside, replaced by a different kind of fear. This was not the terror of immediate destruction. This was the slow, creeping realization that everything they believed about humanity was wrong. Your histories taught us what to expect, continued. Every species in the conclave either conquered or was conquered on their path to the stars. The exterminated 3 pre-civilizations to secure there. The Chur absorbed 17 species through genetic integration. The Monumentals are the sole survivors of a war that sterilized 6 star systems. You call humanity primitive, but your own records show that violence and conquest are the foundation of galactic civilization. High Speaker listened with growing horror as the human ambassador laid out the bloody history of the elder races. Everything she said was true. The Conclave's archives contained detailed records of every conquest, every extermination, every act of genocide that had shaped the current galactic order. These were not secrets, exactly, but they were not discussed in polite company. The elder races preferred to focus on their achievements rather than the cost of achieving them. Humanity studied those records, said. We saw the pattern clearly. The galaxy is not kind to the weak. The galaxy does not reward honesty and openness. The galaxy rewards strength, secrecy, and the willingness to do whatever is necessary to survive. So we adapted. We built our public fleet to look primitive. We built our real fleet in hidden shipyards scattered across a dozen systems. We developed technology that no one else possesses because no one else knew we existed. The silent Prometheus continued its slow rotation, its impossible hull gleaming with reflected starlight. Inside the vessel, human officers monitored the reactions of the alien fleets with quiet satisfaction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. The psychological impact was working perfectly. Stepped closer to the camera, her face filling the screens throughout the station. You had a choice today, she said. You could have welcomed humanity as partners. You could have recognized our potential and helped us take our place among the stars. Instead, you chose mockery. You chose contempt. You designated us a protected wilderness zone, like animals in a preserve. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That was a mistake. Deputy Ambassador James stood beside on the bridge of the silent Prometheus, watching the alien reactions with a mixture of awe and satisfaction. 12 hours ago, he had struggled to believe that any of this was real. Now, seeing the fear on the faces of species that had ruled the galaxy he understood why humanity had chosen this path. The fleet is holding position, one of the human officers reported. No aggressive movements. Their weapons are charged but not firing. Nodded. They're not stupid. They know they can't win a fight they don't understand. Keep all weapons systems on standby. We want them scared, not desperate. On Nexus Prime, High Speaker had retreated to his private chambers, surrounded by his closest advisors. They were arguing about what to do, their voices raised in fear and anger. Some wanted to attack immediately, to destroy the human vessel before it could cause more damage. Others counseled caution, pointing out that attacking a ship they could not target was suicide. We don't know what other weapons they have, Ara argued. We don't know how many ships are hiding in our space. We don't know anything about them anymore. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Slammed his fist against the table. They are humans, he snarled. They live less than a century. They have no history, no culture, no experience. How can they possibly have built something that surpasses our technology? Because they had something we didn't, Ara said quietly. Motivation. They knew what would happen if they revealed themselves too soon. They knew we would destroy them or subjugate them or absorb them. So they hid. They prepared. They waited until they were strong enough that we couldn't touch them. The High Speaker stared at his aide, his yellow eyes burning with frustrated rage. She was right, and he knew it. Humanity had done exactly what they would have done in their position. They had recognized the threat and responded with ruthless efficiency. It was almost admirable. Almost. Contact the human vessel, ordered. Request a diplomatic meeting. If they want respect, they can start by explaining exactly what they expect from us. The request was transmitted and accepted without hesitation. She had been waiting for this moment for years. The humiliation of the conclave chamber was finally bearing fruit. We will meet on neutral ground, she said. Chamber 7 where you are petition, 1 hour. The stage was set. The balance of power had shifted, and humanity was about to make demands that would reshape the galaxy. Part 3. The emergency session of the Galactic Conclave lasted 9 days. During that time, the silent Prometheus remained visible above Nexus Prime, a constant reminder of humanity's hidden strength. The guard fleet maintained its positions but made no aggressive moves. Captain had received direct orders from High Speaker to hold fire unless attacked. No one wanted to be the one who started a war they could not win. Inside Chamber 7, the mood had changed completely. The same representatives who had laughed at humanity's petition now sat in uncomfortable silence, their eyes fixed on Ambassador. She stood at the center of the chamber, exactly where she had stood when they mocked her. But now she spoke with the authority of a species that could no longer be dismissed. "Let me be clear about what humanity is asking for," said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast room. "We are not here to conquer. We are not here to destroy. We are here to take our rightful place as an equal member of the galactic community." High Speaker leaned forward on his dais, his yellow eyes narrow with suspicion. "Equal member," he repeated. "Your species has been spacefaring for less than a century. They have ruled the stars for 12,000 years, the Chur for 15,000. The monumentals claim origins so ancient that even they cannot remember. How can you possibly claim equality with civilizations that have endured for so long?" Smiled. "Because age does not equal capability. Your civilizations are old, High Speaker, old and comfortable and certain of your superiority. You stopped innovating ago because you believed there was nothing left to discover. Humanity has been building for only 80 years, and in that time, we have developed technologies that your best scientists cannot explain." She gestured to the viewport where the silent Prometheus was visible against the stars. "That vessel uses a cloaking system based on principles your physics says are impossible. Its weapons can penetrate any shield your species has ever built. Its sensors can track targets across distances your instruments cannot measure. We did not steal this technology. We did not find it in ancient ruins. We invented it ourselves, in secret shipyards, with researchers who dedicated their lives to ensuring humanity's survival." The Chur representative clicked its mandibles in what the translator identified as reluctant respect. "How is this possible? Our species has been studying physics and engineering for thousands of years. We have explored every mathematical possibility, tested every theoretical framework. There is nothing left to discover." "Nothing left to discover according to your frameworks," corrected. "But your frameworks were built on assumptions that limited your thinking. You assumed that certain things were impossible because they had never been done before. Humanity had no such assumptions. We looked at your technology and asked why. Then we looked at our own theories and asked why not." She turned to address the full chamber. "This is what we offer the conclave: fresh perspectives, new approaches, the willingness to question everything you believe you know. We are not asking to replace your civilizations. We are asking to contribute to them." The debate continued for hours. Representatives asked questions, raised objections, demanded explanations, answered them all with patience and precision, revealing just enough about humanity's capabilities to impress without exposing vulnerabilities. She was walking a careful line between strength and aggression, demonstrating power while avoiding threats. On the third day, the monumental delegate asked the question that everyone had been avoiding. Its crystalline form flickered with colors that indicated deep concern. "You built all of this expecting us to reject you," it rumbled, its voice like stones grinding together. "You anticipated our cruelty. You prepared for our hostility before we ever showed it. What does this say about your species? What does this say about the trust we can place in humans?" Paused before answering. This was the hardest question, the one that struck at the heart of humanity's strategy. She had rehearsed her response 100 times, but it still felt inadequate. "It says that humanity learns from history," she said finally. "Not just our own history, but yours. Every species in this chamber earned its place through violence. Every species here has committed acts that your own laws would now condemn. You exterminated rivals. You conquered neighbors. You eliminated threats before they could become dangerous." She met the monumental's ancient eyes without flinching. "We knew you would judge us by the same standards you applied to yourselves. We knew that openness and honesty would be seen as weakness. So we prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. Can you truly blame us for that? Would any species in this chamber have done differently?" The silence that followed was heavy with uncomfortable truths. The elder races had built their civilizations on foundations of blood and conquest. They had celebrated strength and punished weakness for Now they were being asked to accept a species that had learned their lessons too well. High Speaker broke the silence. "You ask for trust," he said, "but you have proven that you cannot be trusted. You hid among us for 31 years. You watched us and studied us and prepared to destroy us. How can we believe anything you say now?" Turn to face him directly. The same way you believe anything that any species says. Through actions, not words. Humanity could have attacked the moment the silent Prometheus revealed itself. We could have destroyed this station and killed every representative here. We chose not to. We chose dialogue instead of destruction. We chose negotiation instead of war. She gestured toward the viewport again. That ship could end the guard fleet in minutes. It could reduce Nexus Prime to rubble in seconds. Instead, it waits patiently while we talk. Every hour that passes without violence is proof of our intentions. Every day that passes without attack is evidence that we mean what we say. The debate resumed, but the tone had shifted. The elder races were beginning to accept that their options were limited. They could not destroy the human vessel. They could not ignore its existence. They could not return to the comfortable assumptions they had held before. The only path forward was negotiation. On the fifth day, the first agreement was reached. Humanity would be granted full membership in the Galactic Conclave, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. In exchange, humans would share certain non-military technologies with the other member species. The cloaking system would remain a human secret, but advances in medicine, agriculture, and energy production would be made available to all. On the seventh day, trade agreements were finalized. Human goods would be welcome in conclave space, and human merchants would be protected by the same laws that governed other member species. Tariffs and restrictions would be minimal, allowing free commerce between humanity and the elder races. On the ninth day, the final document was signed. The Galactic Conclave formally recognized humanity as an equal partner, with a permanent seat on the Governing Council and a voice in all major decisions. The designation of human space as a protected wilderness zone was revoked. Ambassador would remain on Nexus Prime as humanity's permanent representative. The ceremony was brief and formal. There were no celebrations, no expressions of friendship or goodwill. The elder races had accepted humanity because they had no choice, not because they had changed their opinions. The contempt was still there, buried beneath layers of diplomatic courtesy. But contempt without power was meaningless, and everyone in the chamber knew it. After the signing, returned to the silent Prometheus for a private meeting with her senior staff. Deputy Ambassador James was waiting for her in the conference room, his face troubled. "They hate us," he said bluntly. "Every species in that chamber despises us. We've won our place at the table, but we'll be surrounded by enemies for generations." Sat down heavily, the exhaustion of 9 days of negotiations finally showing in her face. "I know," she said, "but hate is preferable to extinction. Our ancestors faced the same choice when they built the first Phantom ships. They could try to make friends with species that would have destroyed them, or they could make themselves too dangerous to destroy. They chose survival. And now we have to live with that choice." Stared at the star map on the wall, showing humanity's tiny bubble of space surrounded by the vast territories of the elder races. "We'll build relationships slowly, prove ourselves through actions. It might take centuries, but eventually they'll accept us as genuine partners instead of dangerous upstarts." James shook his head. "Centuries, I'll be long dead by then." "So will I, but our children will inherit a galaxy where humanity has a voice. Will inherit alliances built on mutual respect. Every generation that follows will be safer because of what we did here." Managed a tired smile. "That's the best any of us can hope for. The best we can do is give the future a chance." The silent Prometheus remained in orbit above Nexus Prime for 3 more days, a silent reminder of what humanity had achieved. Then, as quietly as it had appeared, it vanished. One moment it was there, 3 kilometers of impossible technology hanging against the stars. The next moment it was gone, returned to whatever hidden space had concealed it for 31 years. The elder races watched it go with a mixture of relief and unease. They knew the ship was still out there somewhere, watching. They knew there were 16 more just like it, scattered across the galaxy in locations that no one could guess. They knew that humanity had changed everything, and that nothing would ever be the same. 2 centuries later, when they arrived at Nexus Prime to petition for membership, the Galactic Conclave's welcome was noticeably warmer. They were young and primitive, their ships as crude as humanity's public fleet had once been. But no one laughed at them. No one mocked their technology or questioned their worthiness. Instead, they were treated with courtesy and respect, given a fair hearing and a genuine chance to prove themselves. Ambassador Sarah, great-granddaughter of, watched the proceedings with quiet satisfaction. She had grown up hearing stories about the day the silent Prometheus revealed itself. She had studied the history of humanity's integration into the conclave, the long centuries of building trust and earning respect. Now she was seeing the results of that work. After the session, the CHUR representative approached her with a question that had been bothering it for decades. "Why did your ancestor choose that moment to reveal the Phantom Fleet?" it asked. She could have done it before the vote. She could have prevented the humiliation entirely. Sarah smiled, an expression that reminded the CHUR uncomfortably of herself. "She wanted you to remember," she said. "She wanted every species in the conclave to remember how you treated humanity when you thought we were weak. She wanted that memory to inform every future interaction with young species." She gestured toward the delegation, now being escorted to comfortable quarters by helpful attendants. "Look at them. They're being treated with dignity because you remember what happened when you treated us with contempt. That memory is more valuable than any treaty or agreement. It changes behavior. It changes culture. It changes the future." The CHUR clicked its mandibles thoughtfully. "Your ancestor was very clever." "She was desperate," Sarah corrected. "Desperate and determined and unwilling to let her species be crushed by ancient powers that should have known better. Everything we did because you taught us that cruelty was the only language the galaxy understood." She met the CHUR's compound eyes steadily. "We're teaching a different lesson now. It's slower and harder, but it's better for everyone." The silent Prometheus and its sister ships still existed, hidden somewhere in the darkness between stars. Humanity still maintained its technological edge, still developed weapons and defenses that no other species could match. Trust was not the same as foolishness, and the lessons of history were not easily forgotten. But the galaxy was changing. Slowly, painfully, one small step at a time. Young species were being welcomed instead of conquered. Differences were being celebrated instead of feared. The old patterns of violence and domination were giving way to something new, something that looked almost like cooperation. It was, perhaps, the most lasting victory humanity had ever won. Not the revelation of the Phantom Fleet, not the forced acceptance into the conclave, but the gradual transformation of a galaxy that had known only cruelty for 10,000 years. Had planted a seed that day in Chamber 7. 2 centuries later, her descendants were finally seeing it bloom.